Hey everyone, Shannon Lavinia here. Super excited to share with you tonight some incredible information about GMOs, genetically modified organisms in your food supply. And this is an unseen danger. Now, here on your screen, you see a lot of different brand labels, and these are brands that all include GMOs in their food. So we want to avoid these brands when we're shopping. I'll talk a little bit more about that and what are some of the better options that are out there. Now on your screen you can, you can make your video bigger just by hitting the little bigger video button, and that'll definitely help you as well. So let me make this screen nice and big so we can see all the good stuff. And I'm going to reduce these little squares over there. Okay, perfect. So what is a GMO? What is a genetically modified organism? Well, it's actually kind of like Frankenstein science. What scientists do is they take the genes, part of the DNA, the genetic code, of other plants or animals, or even bacteria and viruses, and then they put it into the DNA of certain foods. So they'll take the gene out of a bacteria and put it into the genome, the DNA of corn. And that gene that is transplanted is in a new environment that nature did not intend, and it can be very unstable. So the thing to understand about DNA is the segments of DNA are called genes, and certain genes are turned on and certain genes are turned off. And that can change over time based on environmental factors. Well, when you insert a new gene into an organism that nature, or if you believe in God made or nature made, now you've got an entirely new organism. It might look kind of the same, but it isn't the same. It has new DNA. That gene that is transplanted in a new environment can be very unstable, and it can actually change over time. Here's just a quick example of what that looks like. So here you've got a bacteria, and they take a gene out of that bacteria, a little piece of the DNA, and they stick it into the corn. And now this bacteria produces a toxin that's lethal to this type of bug. And now that they've inserted it into the corn, when the bug eats that toxin, the bug gets sick too. Well, unfortunately, there's no tests on humans of what that toxin does in the human body, or what happens to that DNA in the human body. The modification of DNA may include the addition of DNA from species that would not breed in nature, right? Like a fish isn't going to breed with a strawberry. That would just be absurd. But that's what they're doing. They're taking cross species, some plants, some animals, some bacteria and insects, and they're crossing entire species within our animal kingdom and our plant kingdom to make new organisms, right? And it's gone so far as to seriously combine the strawberry DNA with, or the fish DNA with strawberries and with tomatoes. GMOs have only existed in groceries since the late 1990s. And one of the things that I find the most scary about this is the fact that GMOs can be patented. And what that means is that a company will actually own the right to that particular seed, that particular food. And when you think about that, that's terribly frightening, because food is an inherent right of society. It's an inherent right to your survival to be able to grow vegetables in your garden, and to be able to grow plants in your yard, and to be able to go to a farm or a farmer's market and buy vegetables. Well, with GMOs, it actually is not your right, because a company now owns that seed, and you would have to buy it from them. So, for example, if you were to buy a genetically modified watermelon and you were to plant the seeds of that watermelon, you would actually be breaking the law. Why is that? Because those seeds have been patented, and they are owned by the company that's created them, most likely Monsanto. And you hear a lot about Monsanto. So if you were to plant those seeds, you would be breaking the law and you would actually be guilty of, quote, stealing. Doesn't that sound absurd? I don't know about you, but I was raised when we ate some fruit or some vegetables, we collected those seeds, we dried them out, and then we planted them. We planted cantaloupe seeds and honeydew seeds and watermelon seeds. Well, now you have to actually make sure that you're not buying genetically modified organisms, or you do not have the right to those seeds. Pretty scary, right? So are you eating GMOs right now? Yeah, probably you are. There's 30,000 different GMOs existing on the grocery store shelves right now today, mostly because of processed foods containing soy. And I'm also going to add corn to that. Corn, 88% of the corn crop is actually genetically modified. So if you're eating anything with high fructose corn syrup, corn starch, more than likely it's genetically modified. 90% of cotton is genetically modified. So your clothes could be genetically modified. And 94% of soybeans are genetically modified as well. Now, what other products contain genetically modified organisms? Well, we already talked about corn and cotton. Sugar. A majority of beets that are harvested for sugar are genetically modified. Pineapples, tomatoes, papayas, bananas, strawberries, apples, potatoes, and dairy, right? Because cows are actually eating genetically modified organisms. What are the top 10 genetically modified foods? Rapeseed, which makes canola oil, which is very unhealthy for you in the first place. You don't want to be eating that. Tomatoes, peas, dairy products, papaya, rice, potatoes, corn, soy, and cotton. Top 10 genetically modified foods. In addition to that, we also have zucchini, squash, and sugar beets, which I mentioned before. GMOs right now are found in 80% of all processed foods in the United States. Literally almost 100% of fast foods contain genetically modified organisms. Now, before genetically modified organisms came on the scene, scientists had a lot of concerns, and very much rightfully so. DNA is a newly understood subject, and the entire genome of every organism has not been conclusively mapped, meaning they don't exactly know all of the genes, and they don't know how the genes change over time. So, and there's an emerging field called epigenetics. Epigenetics has a lot to do with how the environmental factors affect gene expression, meaning genes turning on and genes turning off. And I talked about that previously when I talked about, siblings who have exactly the same DNA. They just have different genes being expressed. Well, why would 1 out of 3 siblings be overweight, right? 2 are thin, 1 is overweight. Well, that has a lot to do with epigenetics. What's affecting how their genes are actually being affected and are being expressed in the body. So before the FDA allowed GMOs in the marketplace without testing and labeling, FDA scientists warned. Now, surprisingly, because I don't have a lot of faith in the FDA, and the FDA usually doesn't warn about much, but the FDA scientists warn GMOs can be unpredictable. They can change over time. They can also create resistance. So what they're seeing right now in corn plants is that a lot of the genetically modified corn plants are showing resistance to certain pesticides. And the side effects may be very hard to detect. So let's say that you have children that have certain diseases, or you've got an increase in autism, which we do, right? 1 out of every 66 kids right now is being diagnosed with autism, and they don't know the exact source. Well, the rate of autism has gone off the charts since the 1990s when genetically modified organisms hit grocery store shelves. So could there conclusively be a link? Possibly, right? And also the rate of autism here in the United States is the highest in the world. And I'll show you a map here in a second that's going to be a little interesting. GMOs may cause allergies. Now, there's been an increase in severe allergic reactions to certain foods like peanuts, strawberries, nightshade vegetables, dairy products, wheat and gluten. And those allergies have become more severe since the onset of GMOs as well. They may produce toxins, and they may produce toxins in the human body, and those toxins have not been tested for adverse health effects. New diseases may emerge as this DNA changes. There's a part of science called recombinant DNA, which is the study of how DNA combines and changes. So that may cause new diseases. And it also may cause nutritional problems. Now, GMO foods have been linked to tumors, to organ failure, gastric lesions, liver damage, kidney damage, allergic reactions, and more. And glyphosate, the main ingredient in Monsanto's Roundup, if you ever see anybody using Roundup, you want to knock it out of their hand as quickly as possible. That's been linked to more than 20 adverse health effects, including birth defects. So more testing is needed. Now, independently, a lot of universities and research facilities are taking it upon themselves to test GMOs. And the research results have been profound and disturbing. In India, and if you really want to get your head into this, just type into Google Indian farmers and GMOs. In India, there's been a huge uproar over GMOs. One, because it destroyed a lot of the crops and the farming abilities in India, but also thousands of sheep, buffalo, and goats died after grazing on biotech cotton plants. So genetically modified cotton plants. Cotton inherently is not toxic to them, but these were. Mice eating genetically modified corn for the long term had fewer and smaller babies. More than half the babies of mother rats fed GMO soy died within 3 weeks and were smaller. Testicle cells of mice and rats on a GM soy diet changed significantly. And this is the scariest part, the scariest. Infertility is on the rise here in the United States. In studies with GM soy, by the 3rd generation, so that would mean not you, not your children, but your grandchildren, most genetically modified soy-fed hamsters lost the ability to have babies. They became infertile. Terrifying. Rodents fed GM corn and soy showed immune system responses and signs of toxicity, meaning that immune system response means inflammation, right? So their immune system is attacking what's in their body like it was a foreign bacteria or a foreign virus. Cooked genetically modified soy contains as much as 7 times the amount of a known soy allergen. Soy allergies skyrocketed by 50% in the UK soon after GM soy was introduced. Interestingly enough about that, I am allergic to soy, so I cannot eat it. And but when sometimes when I've traveled and there's been natural tofu in countries that banned soy or that banned genetically modified soy, I haven't had an issue, right? Pretty interesting. The stomach lining of rats fed GM potatoes showed excessive cell growth, a condition that may lead to cancer, and studies showed organ lesions. So meaning actual wounds, like if you were to cut your arm, it would be like a cut or a bruise or a scratch on your organs, like your liver and your pancreas. And it also changed enzyme levels, which can have a lot of different effects in the body. Also extremely scary, and this is one of the reasons why I tell people to just stay away from genetically modified organisms. Now, when Monsanto came out with them, they said that the genetically modified part of whatever the food you eat would be destroyed in the stomach and in the intestines. Now, what they've actually found when they studied the blood of 30 pregnant women and 39 women who were not pregnant, they identified the presence of Bt toxins. So that's the actual toxin produced by the genetically modified corn crops. So they found that toxin in both pregnant mothers, 93% of them in their bloodstream, in 69% of non-pregnant women, and even more alarming in the umbilical cords of the babies, 80%. Now these are untested there's no human testing that's been done with genetically modified organisms with the exception of one that was independently done. I'll share that study with you. And this is getting into forming fetuses. Now, if you understand the development of an infant, we all start from one cell, and the perfection of that cell is critical. That cell divides into 2, that cell divides into 4, into 8, into 16, and so forth and so on, and then those cells form our skin and our tissues and our organs. Well, in an ideal world, you want that environment to be absolutely pure and perfect. So to have 80% of this toxin showing up in umbilical cord blood is terrifying. Now, there's been one published human feeding experiment and that revealed that the genetic material inserted into genetically modified soy transfers into the bacteria living inside our intestines, and it continues to function. This also is terrifying. That's called recombinant DNA. And what that means is this DNA that they're putting into the corn or into the soy then transfers into the healthy bacteria that are in our intestines, and it continues to produce that toxin. So now we've got a toxin untested in human testing in our system being produced by the bacteria in our body that are so vital for the nutrient absorption. The bacteria in our gut actually help to break down food and convert the vitamins and minerals into forms that we can absorb and then are absorbed into our system. If the antibiotic gene inserted into most GM crops were to transfer, it could create super diseases resistant to antibiotics. If the gene that creates Bt toxin in GM corn were to transfer, it might turn our intestinal bacteria into living pesticide factories. And what you're looking at here, these are actually lab rats that were fed GMO corn and the resulting tumors that they developed in their bodies. Now, labeling and bans. In the United States does not require labeling of genetically modified organisms, and they do not require testing. Very, very scary. In 50 other countries, there are significant restrictions or outright bans on GMOs. So, like if you were to buy a product from Australia, it would tell you that there is a genetically modified organism in there. In the United States and Canada, it doesn't. And, well, why is that? Why do we not require labeling? The answer to that is because our political system is based on lobbyists. Companies spend millions, if not billions of dollars to pay lobbyists who then hunt down our politicians, our congressmen and our senators, and they plead the case for GMOs. And in many times they also plead with benefits and money and all kinds of other things. And that's why they're not banned here. So it's up to us as an individual to fight for labeling and to fight for banning before this gets too critical. In other countries, in Austria, Bulgaria, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Japan, Luxembourg, Madeira, New Zealand, Peru, South Australia, Russia, France, and Switzerland, these are removed and banned. They're not even allowed there. Okay, so let's talk about farmers. To me, this is also terrifying, and I know I'm using that word a lot, but as a mom, I think a lot about what type of world my daughter is going to be growing up into. And that sounds very heavy, but it's actually very inspiring, and it's very motivating to me because I want to create a better planet for my daughter and for her generation and for all of her friends and the ones she's going to be growing up with. Now already 1 out of 66 of the kids in her generation is being diagnosed with some type of functional disability like autism. And there's different variances of that, right? And that's a huge part of her population. Well, Monsanto, because they are able to patent these seeds, they're actually suing farmers because the GMO seeds have landed on their property. They did not buy them, they did not want them, they will not use them, and then they cannot sell them. But even worse, the Monsanto is suing them and confiscating their farms because they're saying that the farms are now populated with GM seed. Now, how did that seed get there? Through nature. That's part of how seeds spread. If you think about a lawn, right? It's springtime here in Park City now, and we went outside and my daughter found a dandelion, right? And she was so excited because it's a beautiful little yellow flower. And we look at it as a weed, not anymore. Now we look at it as she's so excited to go pick dandelions. We love it. But one dandelion becomes 20 dandelions, becomes 100 dandelions, right? Well, the reason for that is the wind actually carries the pollen and it carries the seed. And that's true in nature of fruits and vegetables as well. So when a farm decides that they're going to use Roundup and use Roundup Ready seed. Roundup Ready seed means that the plant has been genetically modified to resist Roundup so that they can use this pesticide on their crops and this herbicide to kill the weeds. Let's say you've got one farm on one side of the street and another farm on the other side of the street, and one decided to use GMO seed. Well, the farm on the other side of the street automatically becomes suspect, because they know that the seed is going to fly across the street and land on that property. And if that seed starts to grow, they can then take that farmer to court for illegally planting GMO seed, even though he did not intentionally do it. What's even scarier about this is how on earth are we going to even know what's GMO and what's not GMO if the seed can spread like wildfire? But these farmers are losing their land. And I put this in here, this little cartoon, which really isn't funny, but it's a good explanation. Here you've got an environmentalist, right, obviously here, saying genetically modified canola has spread into the wild. What he's really talking about is rapeseed has spread into the wild. What will Monsanto do about this? And over here you've got Monsanto saying this is outrageous. Once again, someone is trying to benefit from our patented GM crops. Find out immediately how we can sue nature. The other thing that they're doing, and you can just type in Monsanto gives money to in Google. Monsanto just gave a couple $100,000 to a community in South Dakota to build a community center. So of course people are going to feel like, wow, they just gave us this incredible community center. You've got this rundown community of farms and farmers who now have this gorgeous over-the-top community center funded by Monsanto. Of course they're going to feel a sense of obligation, or a sense like, wow, they're helping us out, when in essentially they're not. Monsanto, this is kind of the motto that I feel, is control the food supply and you control the people. And that's where we're headed. When you take away someone's inherent right to buy an apple and plant the seeds, or to buy an orange and plant the seeds, or to buy a cucumber and plant those seeds, you're literally depriving them of their ability to survive, right? And that's the risk that we're running. So how can you avoid GMOs? Well, first you want to buy organic. And there's a lot that people will say about organic, of course, funded by the media and the lobbyists, where they'll say organic isn't better for you. That is a bunch of BS. Organic foods are better for you in so many ways. One, they're not genetically modified. Nothing can be labeled USDA organic if it is, or if it contains any genetically modified organisms. So in order to pass USDA organic standards, it has to be free of GMOs. Two, organic foods are not treated with pesticides. And pesticide residue can actually get inside of the fruits and the vegetables through the soil, through the water. So to be sure that your fruits and vegetables are free of any pesticide residue, not just washing the outside, but the inside as well, you want to buy organic. In terms of protein sources, you want to buy grass-fed beef. Organic is best. Or from a local farm. You know, I can actually go to the farm where our beef comes from. And out here in Utah, grazing land is so prolific. Nobody's using fertilizers or pesticides or herbicides on the tens of thousands of acres, millions of acres of grazing land out here. In fact, we just saw behind our house the other day, they just brought a whole load of sheep to graze behind where we live, which is really cool. With fish, you want to buy wild caught, and only wild caught. Farmed fish, many of them are genetically modified. As well, farmed fish are typically high in toxins and pollutants. And if you can imagine a lot of fish living in a very small space, they're also consuming the urine and feces and everything else that are coming out of all the other fish, right? Sounds kind of disgusting, but that's how it is. And you want to get free-range chickens. Organic chickens are best because it means that they're not fed genetically modified food. You look for this label, the non-GMO project verified. This label certifies that no ingredient in any of the food that you're getting is genetically modified. And they do verify every single ingredient and the source of every single ingredient. The other thing is you want to support companies that sell non-GMO food. Now, some of this can be a little bit more expensive, and part of that is because they're going through this certification. Getting organic certification and getting non-GMO certification costs money. So this food might be a little bit more expensive for you to get, but it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth not putting yourself at the risk, and also supporting our organic farmers and our small sustainable farms, and really helping to give a lot of funding to these companies that work hard to make sure that we're not eating GMOs and that we're eating healthy. Now, you'll be happy to know that RX products are all non-GMO. And even further, every ingredient in our products is certified by legal affidavit, meaning the company that produces the ingredient has to sign an affidavit saying that what they are providing as an ingredient source is non-GMO. So not every ingredient is the non-GMO product verified, but every ingredient is certified legally to be non-GMO in all of our products. And it'll always be that way. We will never have any genetically modified organisms in our products. And we don't use soy, we don't use wheat, none of our products have gluten. I'm always amazed. The other day I was over at a wonderful gentleman's house, really, really nice guy, and he is a representative for another company, which would be considered to be a competing company, and he gave me some of his product to try, and we didn't feel good taking it at all. And then he wanted to give me some of their protein powder, but their protein powder contains soy, it wasn't verified non-GMO, and it contains sucralose, which is Splenda. And this is considered to be a, quote, health product that they're using for their weight loss system. And I just thought, you know, I'm so glad that I'm offering the products that I'm offering because they're so healthy and they're so health-oriented on the ingredient level. So you can choose these companies as well. Now, many of you who are watching this webinar are already taking RestoreX. One of the reasons that I recommend to take RestoreX is because it can help to balance the pH levels in the body, but it also helps to remove free radicals and unwanted substances. GMOs are foreign to the body. Anything that's foreign to the body that comes in can produce free radicals. It can also promote an inflammatory response, and RestoreX can help to handle that. So taking RestoreX is an amazing detoxing avenue to help eliminate any of the residuals from GMOs that may be in your body while you're getting off of them. So very, very important. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys tonight about GMOs. Hopefully I scared the living daylights out of you and you'll never eat another genetically modified organism. If that's how you feel, that's my intention. I know this is a bit of an intense webinar, but there's more that I could share with you. And this literally is like jumping down the rabbit hole. Because once you pull the string, it's like pulling the string and everything falls out of the closet. And when you see the research that's coming out of other countries that have banned GMOs, you really start to understand why they are so dangerous. And when you look at the health of our country, hey, we are, in terms of the World Health Organization, we are number 40 in our country's health. I dare you to try and name 40 countries off of the top of your head. Right? When I sat down to do this, now I'm a pretty smart person and I've traveled around the world, it was hard for me to get 40 countries out. So we're number 40 in terms of health. And we also are the least restrictive in what we allow in our, quote, food supply. And, you know, for a country that is a, quote, superpower and has a lot of freedom, not restricting ingredients and just allowing anything to be in our food, there really has to be more regulation. Now, how do you get that regulation? You take a stand. If you see petitions coming along your way to fight GMOs, sign them. If you see the opportunity to write a letter to your senator, your congressman about GMOs and labeling, send it, right? Take 5 minutes and just send it out there and help to change the evolution of our food supply. So that's it for tonight, guys. Just buy organic, eat organic, stay away from processed foods, definitely stay away from fast foods because that's going to have a ton of GMOs in it. And you're gonna, you're gonna feel better, you're gonna have greater health, and you're gonna start to get rid of the residuals that are in your system from that. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for being here, and I'll get this recording published for you real soon.